Hi everyone, this is Jean Talene. As you can see, I'm recording a video of the Google Doc session that I did on Monday night. We didn't record it then because we had a Zoom call going and we would have had to have permission from everyone on the Zoom call because their pictures would show up. So I decided to redo this session without any participants. So hopefully if you missed the session or if you'd like to see me go through some of the techniques again, you can watch this video. I have two documents open, two windows open, excuse me. I have Google Docs, which is a PDF handout that I made. The first 4 pages, I'll just flip through a few of them, are pictures and explanations of what you will see when you get into Google Docs. So that's the first 4 pages. And then the 5th page and 6th page are practices that we're going to work through. And I'll come back to this periodically for those of you who don't yet have a copy. I believe that this will be posted along with this video, this handout and the video. So you can download the handout. I'll make sure of that and when I talk to President Bev. I'm going to switch to my Google Chrome. I have it open to Google. There are 2 ways that you can access Google Docs. The first one would be right here from the Google homepage. Over in the corner, I have signed in to my account here, and next to that I have 9 little dots. And those 9 little dots will give me a menu when I click on them. You will notice that here in my list is Google Drive. When you open yours with your Google account, the Google Drive icon may be located somewhere else in the list. You can move these around if you would like, but I just learned where the Google Drive is, and this is it. So that's option 1 for opening and getting to Google Docs. Option 2, and the most common one, is that when you're in your Gmail account, which I'm opening right now, you still have those 9 little dots, and you can click on Google Drive and open that. So there are 2 ways, but both ways involve getting those 9 little dots, which are always available, and I can then see those options anytime I would like. Let's say I would like to go to my calendar. I could click there. I could go to my contacts, etc. So I also have Google Maps and many other things that are available through Google. Okay, so this is Google Drive, and before we get started, there is one thing about Google Docs that you need to think about before we start this tutorial. So I've stated this problem or issue at the bottom of page 1 of the handout. So you can read it there, but I'd just like to say a few words. Google Docs and actually Google Spreadsheets, Google Slides, which is their version of PowerPoint, those all work in the same way, which is different from what it is if you're used to working on your computer. If you use Pages because you work on a Macintosh, or you use Word, either on an Apple product or on a PC, we're used to working on a document, saving it periodically, we hope, so we don't lose it, and continuing to do that. The nice thing is that until you save it, your original version is still available. And so many times if you're editing, you've got a document already created and you're going through to edit it. Let's take, for example, you can see here that I have a recipe for coconut bars, which are very, very good, by the way. Anyway, if I were to open that recipe in Word and make changes, the original document would be not unchanged until I do a save. So I can always do a file save as, save it with a new name, and now I have the original, and then I have the one with the new name. In Google, because this is cloud-based, remember, you're not working on your computer, you're working from your browser, and you're working, everything is being saved to the cloud, known as Google Drive. If I were to bring this up and make changes to it, Google would save those changes immediately upon my changes. And that means my original would be lost. So I have a suggestion that you make a copy of this, and I'll be referring to that later on. There's a place to make a copy, and I'll show you that. But I just wanted you to think about the fact that this does not work the same way as it does when you're on your computer. Now, they do have a Google Offline, and if you're working offline, then the changes would not take effect until you go back online. So keep in mind that you have that difference between what you're used to if you used to use Word, or now if you're going to use Google Docs. If you're following along with the handout, the first page is what I just kind of covered, and now we're going to look at page 2. And on page 2, I have a picture of this left top section of Google Drive. Notice that we have several options. It identifies the fact we're in Google Drive. We have a search box here. We have a reminder that this is My Drive. Notice if I press that little arrow that's next to the word My Drive, I get the options to new folder, upload files, Google Docs, etc. If I press New, I get those same options: folder, add a folder, upload, Google Docs, etc. So you have two different ways that you can get to Google Docs. Pick the one that you want, but before you do that, I'd like you to notice that in the center here, we have a list of any files and folders that I have created in my Google Docs. Now this works very much like your My Content folder, or that works on your computer, in the respect that you have a place where you save things. You make folders to keep track of what they are so that you can find things easily. The search up here also lets you find things easily as long as you give them a name that is recognizable. For in other words, if you were looking for minutes of a meeting, you would type the word, I assume that you would have the word minutes in the title of that file. So if you were searching for minutes, you could put that word up here and it would bring up all documents in your drive that have the word minutes in it. And we hope you could find the minutes for the date that you were looking. Shared with me is just files that have been shared with you by someone else. And so these are things that were shared from others to you, and they automatically show up here when they share them with you. We'll be talking about sharing at the Google Docs 2 session next Monday night at 7 o'clock. If you hit recent, it's just what it says. It's recent files that you've worked with. So if you used it in the last, you can see here it says earlier this week, last month, etc. Starred, we'll talk about next week. Starred is a way for you to have a special list of files. You will notice that I have no starred files or folders, but I'll show you how to do that next week, and we'll investigate that. And then finally, of course, we all know what trash is. You select a file, you hit trash, and that file will be trashed. I'm not going to, this is my receipt from when I attended a James Taylor concert, so I guess I'll keep that for a little while longer. You'll notice that storage is the last thing in the list. In a free account, Google gives you 15 gigabytes. You'll notice that mine is almost full. I probably need to work at cleaning some of it out. You have to buy storage if you need more than the 15 gigabytes. Now, if you have a school account, you have an unlimited amount, and that's because they don't want teachers to have to worry about how much they've put into their files. That's a service from Google when you're a Google school. So that's the menu on the left side. This will change. The Google Drive icon and name will change as you move into Docs. There will be a Docs icon, and that corner up there, you can always tell where you're located. At the bottom of the page, I've looked at this section over here. On the right side, notice I have my, this is, instead of a picture of me, I have my Cubs logo. Hopefully we'll have ball games sometimes this year. obviously the 9 dots that we've talked about. I want you to focus on this little group here. When I press that, it lets me change how my files are presented. Notice now I have larger boxes in kind of a grid pattern. If I click that again, I'm back to a list. And in the list, of course, I can see when it was modified and the size of the file. We also have a trash can here. Works same as the trash can over on the left side. You identify a file, you click trash, and it will ask if you're sure you want to delete that. There are some icons over along the side. I'll talk about those a little bit later. So that is the basic look of Google Drive. I guess I might as well mention those icons over along the side. It's at the bottom of page 2 along the right side. This is a quick link to get to your calendar. So if you don't want to have to go up here to the 9 little dots and find your calendar, you could click here. This one is the Keep, which we'll talk about next week. And finally, the last one is a list of tasks. And so if you want to keep track of tasks, you have this here, and you can add a task and then check them off as you finish your tasks. The little X in the corner lets me delete or close that down so that it doesn't take up as much space. So right now I'm going to open a new Google Docs file, and as I said earlier, I can either go to the New button or I can go up here. That's disappeared now because I'm in the trash, but if I go back here to My Drive, now My Drive is available, and I can go down here to Google Docs, or I can go here to New. So in your handout it points out that if I go to Google Docs, either here or under the My Drive, I can click on Google Docs, and that will get me a new Google Doc file. There is an arrow to the right, and if I click on that, you will notice that I get the option for a blank document or from a template. Google offers you templates. We'll just take a look at that real quick. Notice I could get a template for a resume, I could get a template for a project proposal, I could get a brochure template, I could get a resume template, so more resume options. So, and over here on the side, when I pull this down, there are lots and lots of templates for you to pick from. They've identified them as these are work options, maybe proposals of some kind. And we have sales proposals, we have legal document options, human resources. So you can see that there are a whole lot of templates, and if you see one there that you'd like to use, then certainly feel free to pick one of those and then put your own material in. So I'm going to go back to the top up here where my tabs are. Notice Google Docs is here. I could go back here and go back to New and click Google Docs, and I'll get a blank window. So on page 3, I have some information about that window that you now see if you've opened Google Docs. So let's start across the top. We have the familiar File menu, and at the bottom of page 3 on the left side, I've circled several things that you won't see if you've used other file menus on other programs. So share, we'll discuss that in great detail at this Google Docs 2 next Monday. That's how we share files with others. Make a copy. Now you remember I said earlier that it's a good idea if you have a file that you, like my recipe, that you don't want to change until you're ready to make the change, make a copy. And I'll walk you through that a little bit later, but that's where this is. It's in the File menu for Make a Copy. Download. Download lets you download a document, possibly one that's been shared with you, and you can download it into a format that you would like. Let's say that you've typed minutes for a meeting, and you'd like to download those minutes as a PDF document. PDFs are useful because not only can they not be changed, but they also can be opened on multiple types of computers, whether it be a Chromebook or an Apple iPad or a MacBook or a Windows PC, whether it be a Windows 7 or a Windows 10. So that's a real useful tool to distribute minutes to your members. Rich text format, that's a basic word processing format, but all word processors recognize it. So if you're working with a officer in your chapter or in the classroom where you've got a student at home that has a computer that's a different type than the one that you have, you could make it in rich text format, and then most programs, I'm going to say all programs, no matter what the type of computer, will allow that student to make changes to that document. PDFs are readable only. Rich text format can be edited, and of course, the familiar Microsoft Word is there as well. And the last one that I want to point out is all the way at the bottom, and this is my record option down here at the bottom. So I'm going to move that a little bit so that you can see my file menu. Down here at the bottom, we have page setup, and in Word and Pages, that's located somewhere else, but here in Google Docs, it's in the file menu. So page setup allows you to change margins. So I'll come back to that a little bit later, but we're gonna use that when we do our activities. You can change the paper from portrait to landscape, and you can change the size of the paper if you wanted to use something different than the standard 8.5 by 11. You could make the page a different color. So if you wanted the whole page to have a purple background, you could go over here and choose purple. And so now when I say OK, you will notice that my background is purple. We're going to get rid of that real quick, but I wanted you to see that those options are there. We'll come back here and change this back to white and say OK. All right. The edit menu is also shown at the bottom. That's a pretty familiar menu. Undo, redo, cut, copy, paste. The one I wanted you to see is find and replace. Let's say that you've typed the minutes and you discover that you've typed minutes and you have misspelled a member's name several times in the minutes. One option, of course, is to go into each of those errors and make the change. Find and replace, though, will let you make the change to all of those at once. So notice when I click it, I get a place to have it find. So you would type here the wrong way you spelled that person's name. Type that here, and then down under replace with, you would type the correct way their name is spelled. And then when you've done that, these buttons at the bottom, replace and replace all, would be available, and you would click on replace all. And if there are 7 places that you've misspelled this person's name, it will say we have found 7 and we have changed those. So that's a real fast way to make corrections and to make sure that you found all the changes that needed to be made. I use that frequently. Okay, so that's the edit menu. And the last one on page 3 is the view menu. The view menu, we're in print layout, so you're going to see exactly how it will be printed. Show ruler. I like a ruler across the top. Notice I have a 1 here and 7.5 over here. That's because it doesn't count this 1 here. But if I change my margins, this is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, so it's 8.5 across, but right now we have an inch in here, and we have an inch in here that's not being counted, and so my open space here is 6.5 inches. So again, I like that ruler so I can see where things are placed on the page, and it helps if you're placing an image. Okay? So I'm not going to go on to the rest of that menu. Instead, we're going to go in the middle of the page 3. I went across this ruler bar here with all the icons. Some of them are very familiar. Undo and redo. You make a mistake, you can undo it rather quickly, and it will remember the last several moves. I'll demonstrate that when we get started with putting some text on this page. We have a printer icon. Moving across, you'll notice that as I move my cursor to each of those, it tells me what it is. Spelling and grammar check. This is a paint format. My zoom right now is at 100%. You can use the little arrow to change that. Normal text as opposed to a header or a title or something like that. I have Arial font with all the other fonts that they've given us to use. Change the letter size, text size. bold, italic, underline, all things we're familiar with. So the first one that I circled was this one. It's text color. And if you have something typed, you can highlight it and then change the text color. I usually wait to change text color to have all my typing done, and then I go back and I change the things that need to be changed. The button right next to it is highlight, and I'll be demonstrating those in a few minutes. The link button is next, so if you wanted to put a link that would pick your people reading your document could just click on and it would take them to that location on the web. That's where you would put that link. The next one is add a comment. There's nothing on this page to add a comment to, so that's grayed out right now, but eventually that will be available. And then insert image is another one that I have highlighted here. There is another option for doing that in the insert menu up here at the top, but that's a quick way. That's one of the things that people like to do is insert images, and so that's a way to do that. You will notice that when I click that, we get the option to upload one that's already on my computer or to go out and search the web. I can also go find one in my Google Drive if I have one there. It will take me to photos. I can also go to a certain URL. That's a web address and find it there if I already know what that web address is. And I could use my camera to take a picture on the computer. That would be the computer camera. Or not the camera that is looking at you, but the one that they give you to take a picture. We'll demonstrate that later. Of course, my alignments, and we have numbered list and bulleted list over here. Indent so that you can do different levels on your lists also are there. So that's the menu bar, and please refer back to it if you have anything that you've forgotten when you're looking for something. On page 4, we're going to look at the rest of the menus. So the first one up is the insert menu, and you will notice that there are some stars on the handout. And the reason there are stars on the handout, let me get to that page. Here, there are stars because these are things that you might be looking for, and so I want to draw your attention to them. They aren't things that we use a lot, but I wanted you to make sure and see that those are there. So I'm going to flip back to my document up here. Then here's the insert menu. Image, I already mentioned. Table. What if I want to put in a table? Well, you'll notice that when I click on table, I get a 1-by-1 table, one cell. But if I drag across that, now I have a 2-by-5 table, and I'll actually be asking you to practice that a little bit later. You can make a drawing, and we'll investigate that a little bit later in next week's session. How would you make a drawing in your document? You can add a chart, a bar chart, a column chart, a line chart, and there are other things that you can do, especially when you have a spreadsheet open. I won't be looking at that next week, but that is an option which can be useful. Horizontal line, that just allows you to put a separator on your document so you could separate one section from another and do it rather quickly. If you're teaching this in the classroom, students often have to do footnotes, and this is where you would find the footnote. You will notice down here at the bottom is header footer, and so if you're teaching that, you can use that to do that. Page numbers, they give you some options. Let me move my recorder box. Insert. If you're doing page numbers, notice the very first option is to put the page number on the first page and on subsequent pages in the upper right corner. However, the other choice next to it, maybe you have a title page, so there's no number on that page, but it would start numbering page 1 on page 2, actually, skipping the title page in the upper right corner. You have those same options on the next group, only the pages at the bottom. Page 1 is numbered. In the second option here, page 1 is not numbered, and page 2 becomes page 1. There are more options, and I'll let you investigate those if you would like. Please notice that there are special characters. We can insert those just like we can if you've used those in your other word processing programs. The format menu, It allows you to format text, but please notice that all the options there are listed on that icon bar at the top, and so that's a much faster way to do that. You can align and indent. Again, all of that is listed in the menu bar at the top, and much easier to do it that way. Line spacing is also at the top. Notice the icon out here to the side that tells you that's what line spacing tool should look like. And when we go look for that tool, oh, of course, I don't see it. Yeah, nope. So, oh, there it is, right there. Line spacing. I thought it was there. And that's a similar icon to what it is in other word processing programs. Format, page numbers again, and header footers are also on this column, and you can see that you can format a table. That's not to make a table, that's to format a table. And the reason it's grayed out on my screen is because I don't have a table, so it knows that, so there's no option there. The tools menu, word count is the only one I circled on page 4 because word count is something that students need to know. There's also the spelling and grammar option. Down here in the middle, there's a dictionary. Very handy to have that available. And whoops, back to format. And down here, we have clear formatting and preferences. I'm not in the right one. How about, I got to get in the tools menu. Sorry about that. Preferences down here. Word count at the top. Voice typing. If you have a student that has difficulty typing, voice typing takes a little while for Google to understand your nuances in your voice, but with practice, that's a very useful tool. Add-ons. The add-ons menu lets you add some extras to Google Docs, and I've listed a few of them there to the right side. Of course, being a former math teacher, math type would be one that I would want. It allows you to type things like square roots and other math symbols that aren't on a keyboard. For the music teacher, there's one called Flat that allows you to do music notation. There's a word cloud generator, which if you ever want to do a word cloud, that's very interesting to use. So just take a look at those. I may mention a few more at the session next week, but I wanted you to know that those are there. Oh, and for the person that wants to make mailing labels, there is also an Avery Labels add-on, which lets you choose labels that you have by the box number and then set up labels that way. So a lot of great additions to Google Docs can be found under the add-ons. Okay. All right, so that pretty much takes us through what you have available for use in Google Docs. So if we turn over to page 5, we're going to work from 1 through 5 today, and then we'll start with number 6 and add some more to it next Monday night. If you can be with us on Monday night at 7 o'clock, please let me know. My email address is on the handout, and you can contact me if you would like. I'll make sure that you have the information to connect with us via Zoom next week. I would ask you to be sure and mute your Zoom window so that we don't hear background noise. We had about 60 on the call last week, and a few people forgot to mute, and it got a little noisy at times. So please be sure you know about the mute option. That is a microphone, and you simply click the microphone, and it mutes your microphone on your computer. All right, so we're on page 5. And on page 5, it says, with Google Drive open, click New. On the upper left, choose Google Docs. Well, I'm already in Google Docs, so I'm going to start with number 1. And it says, first type of file name in the box to replace untitled document. So up here at the left, I'm going to select that. You'll notice when I select that, it highlights the words untitled document in blue. You do not need to click in there and backspace and delete all that. Once it's highlighted in blue, the minute I start typing, it will delete that. And I'm going to call this test 2 because I already did test 1 when I did the first version of this. You will notice that it says test 2 in my drive, and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to type the word test 2 as well. Now that's pretty small font. It's size 11. My old eyes really need a 14, so I could go here to the size of text. Notice I have test 2 highlighted. I'm going to change that to a 14. I could also go here where it says normal text, and I could pick title. So you have a couple of options there. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to go up here to the align button, which is these horizontal lines, and I'm going to hit the down arrow, and I'm going to go to center. So now my title is centered. When I hit a return to type the next line, this time it popped back over to the left, but if it doesn't, you can simply go to the align button and choose left align. Okay, so I'm going to hit another one, and my instruction there on your handout is to change all the open file menu, change all the margins to 0.75. So if you remember, we go to File. I'm going to go down, and again, my little recorder is in the corner, so I'm going to have to go back and do that again because I want to get down here to Page Setup at the very bottom. And we're going to change all of these margins to 0.75. And on the call the other night, on the call we did, I had someone point out that you can highlight that, and if you're going to make them all 0.75, you can highlight that 0.75. I'm going to use the Control Copy on a Mac. That's Command Copy or C, and now I'm going to go down here, and instead of typing 0.75, I can do Control V or Command V, and that will do that. I'm not a big fan of typing, so I'm not real great at it. So I use those keystrokes to cut, copy, paste a lot. You can also right-click. So I could have highlighted that and then right-clicked. And if I right-click on it, got to make sure my cursor's on it. You notice I get the option to cut, copy, paste, and out here at the side it reminds me that Control X, Control C, and Control V will cut, copy, paste. So I have my margin set. I'm not going to change the page color. I still want to be portrait, and I still want it to be a standard sheet of paper. So I'm going to say OK. And you'll notice that my margin up here at the top is now only is only 0.75, and over here on this side it's only 0.75 as well. You'd probably never use 0.75. I use 0.5 a lot, but that's where what I decided to do for this particular exercise. So now I'm going to ask you to type a few sentences just for practice, and you'll notice that we're back at size 11. I'm going to change that to 14 so it's viewable, and I'm just going to type some nonsense. This is my second sentence. I guess if I'm going to put a number sign, I really don't need the word number. And I'm sure the reason that's underlined is because it's redundant, and Google's grammar check knows that it's redundant, so we'll do it that way. This is number 2, and I'm going to use a return to get to the next line. I ask you to type a few sentences, and I also ask you to notice the words at the top of the page. So I'm going to hit a return and start paragraph 2. And what I want you to notice is up here at the top, you have to look real quick. It says saving, and then when it's saved, it says saved in Google Drive, but please notice that it doesn't last very long. This little cloud feature right here tells you that you can see your document status. Notice it says all changes have been saved in the drive, and it is ready for offline use if I would like to use that. And it talks a little bit about that there. But if I type some more, if you look, whoops, I have to click down here. While I'm typing, you will notice that up here it says saving and then saved in drive, and then those words go away. But they do show up every time. If you're hesitant about whether your internet's on or whatever, please just look there. You will also notice that it tells me that it was edited seconds ago, and if I click on that, it does show me the time frame that I was working and who is doing the work. So if you had several students that you had shared a document with and they were all to be contributing, then over here on the side you could see who entered what when and who hasn't entered anything. So of course that's a very useful tool when you're in the classroom. Okay, so I'm going to hit a period there at the end, and now we're going to move down to number 3. I already did that. It says start a new paragraph. After a few sentences, highlight them and change their color to blue. So I'm going to highlight these and change the color to blue because I want to show you what happens next. So, whoops. Yep, that's the right one. So my paragraph is now blue. Now here's what I want you to notice. I'm ready to do paragraph 3. And because I hit a return, it did not bring the blue down. But notice, if I go back to that paragraph and start typing, it's still blue. So once again, I typed this sentence, paragraph 2 is where I am now. I highlighted it and I changed it to blue. And if I continue typing, the blue will still be there. But if I hit a return and start a new paragraph, then the blue does not continue. Now, let's say that I really only wanted that one sentence in blue, so I can highlight the word start, and I can go back to my color, and I can turn that back to black. And now the rest of that paragraph will be I can't think and talk and type at the same time. So notice I turned it back to black. But that only happened because I highlighted that word start and changed it back to black. Otherwise, that whole paragraph would have been blue. But paragraph 3 then is here, and it is now back to black. If you are a person who wants to indent that first sentence, then by all means put your cursor at the beginning and hit a tab, and it will indent it the standard 5 spaces. All right, so I'm going to hit a return, and I don't want it to be indented, so I'm going to backspace so that it's over here on the side. And the reason for that is that we're on number 4. We're going to insert a table, and I've suggested that you make it 3 by 3. So I'm going to click Insert. I'm going to go to Table, and there's my 1-to-1, but I'm going to hold my cursor down, and I'm going to make that a 3 by 3. Now, once you've decided your dimensions, and notice it says 3 by 3 at the bottom, you simply release, and when you take your finger off the keyboard, the table shows up. All right? So let's talk about this 3D table. Let's type some numbers and text in those different cells and let you see what happens. So this is my first box, and this is my second, and this is my third. And down here we'll put some numbers, and here. Now you will notice that those are automatically left justified. And so if you want them to be different, and we're going to take that top row and we're going to highlight the whole row. So I'm going to click and drag my cursor across, and I'm going to highlight that whole row, and we're going to go up here to our alignment button, and we're going to say I would like to align those center. And so now they're centered. Okay. Now let's say that I'd like the background of that top row to be a different color. So the way to do that is I've highlighted that whole top row. I'm going to right click somewhere in that top row, and I'm looking for table properties. And I go all the way down here to properties, and I can change the table border. I can change the cell background color. So I'm going to make this a light yellow, and I'm going to say OK. Now notice only the row that I had highlighted is the one that changed. If you want to change the whole table, you'll have to highlight the whole table and change the whole table. But I just wanted that one changed. Okay. Now let's talk about a couple of other things relative to this table. If I click in a cell, which right now I'm clicked in the bottom right, you will notice, and it's barely viewable, right here, you can see where my cursor is circling, there's a little gray arrow. I'm going to click that. And notice that when I click that, it lets me choose how I want a border on this cell. Now this is really important. If I decide that I want that whole cell to have a border all the way around it, row 1, column 3, I will get an outside border. But that's just highlighting the border, that's not putting the border. Something else happened when I clicked that. When I identified this cell, up here in my menu, you will notice that the menu over here is all gone. All those other options are gone, and now I just have undo, redo, print, 100%, and I have a border color option. And when I click that, I can change this to a red border. I can also make it a thicker border. Right now it's only 1 point. That's how they measure things sometimes in computers. Actually, my dad was a printer by trade, and he set type for a printing company and for a newspaper, and that's how they counted thickness, was by points. So I'm going to go down here to the 3 and make it a 3 point. You will notice that I can now see my red border through the blue highlight, and when I click in space, I now have a red border on that cell. If I click another cell, there's that little drop down arrow in light gray. Let's say that I want to put a bottom line on that cell. So I only want a bottom line there. Maybe you've got some things above it that you want to add up, and you want a line here to show that you're going to put the total underneath that. Obviously I didn't do that, but that was an option. As soon as I click that, that little line option showed up at the top. And again, I can make it a thickness. We'll make that one 4.5 so you can see that there is a difference. And now I have a thicker border. It's not quite so obvious because I did orange instead of red, but it is just a little bit thicker. Okay, so you have here the options that come to you with table, and certainly I would encourage you to play around with that. Maybe create a table that has a little more thought to it, maybe a list of student names, maybe their locker combinations or something like that, or their locker numbers or their phone numbers, or type in their email addresses or something like that. I know you don't have your students for next year, but probably yet, but hopefully you'll be getting that soon. So we have made it through to number 4 on the list of activities. We're going to do number 5 now, and then we'll pick up with number 6 next week. So where is word count? Well, if I go to tools, you might recall that I mentioned that word count was there, and when I click word count, it tells me that I have 1 page, 41 words, 175 characters, and if we ignore spaces, then 146. You can display the word count, and students, if they don't know about this, would probably like to know this. If you've assigned them a 200-word essay, then they want to keep track of every word. So you hit display, and notice that it will appear down here in the left corner of my window. and will keep track for me. There is a little down arrow there, and I can see more information, but right now it just tells me words, but you'll notice that it will show me the other things that it's counting as well. Okay. Well, that is the end. I do want to show you real quickly what happened to this document. Remember that it was saving it up here. So we're going to go up here and we're going to click this Docs Home button. And there is actually a picture of this on page 3 in the middle. It's the Docs icon. And when I click on that, I get the option to see my docs, and there is my new doc, test 2, right there. Let me move my recorder. There is my new doc, test 2, and I also have 3 little buttons, and those 3 little buttons are the main menu, which looks familiar. I have docs, sheets, slides, and at the very bottom I have Google Drive, so that will take me back to my Google Drive. And I'm at my Google Drive, and there under my quick access is test 2. There's my test 1 from last week. You can see it looks a little different. And if I go down here, I have my documents in order of last modified. And so they're counting down. So my last modified is at the top, and the one that I modified years ago when I opened this file, this account, is at the very bottom. And there's my test 2. So you have a couple of places to see that. Notice I have an untitled document here that's probably empty, and I could trash that, so I'll click trash. So I've cleaned up my Google Drive a little bit, but there is my trash folder now. But if I go back to my drive and scroll down through my folders, then there it is. We are going to make a folder before we leave you today. If I go to New and I go to Folder, it shows me an untitled folder, and we'll call this Google 2. No, we'll call it Google Docs. Whoops, Docs 1. And create. If I scroll down through my folders, it went somewhere. There it is at the very top, because I have my things in order of last modified. And so now if I want that test 2 to be in there, I click on it, and I can drag it up there, or I can right click. So I could grab this and just drag it up there, or I can right click and I can say move to, and it brings up my drive, and now they're in alphabetical order rather than last modified, and there's my Google Docs 1 folder. And when I click on that, I say move, and now if I go up to that folder, there it is, and I open that folder, there is test 2. So you can organize your files pretty quickly. Now I have a friend who says she never organizes her files into folders because you can just search and find everything. So that's totally up to you. All right, so that ends our Google Docs 1. I hope you'll practice, and I hope that you can make the call next week. But if you can't, I will be recording a version like this one after that session is over. It took 48 minutes, and hopefully you can find some time, but you can always come back and view it again.